Now to the planning task, the fourth task in motivational interviewing. We've covered the engaging process and focusing, finding your goals together, and the evoking process, which is most unique to motivational interviewing. And now we talk about planning. And I've got these six topics to cover briefly today. Different planning scenarios, how to evoke confidence with motivational interviewing, how to give information and advice, a reminder about mobilizing change talk, and then I'll talk just a bit about how people learn and develop skills in motivational interviewing, and give one last segment on how motivational interviewing overlaps with what makes effective therapists. So it's time for planning when you're engaged with the client, when you have clear shared goals, and when the client seems to be sufficiently interested and motivated to move ahead. Now, it happens that some people come in ready for change, and you don't need to go through all the other processes. In fact, doing that could even slow down progress rather, if the person is really ready to go. So, if the person seems eager and ready to proceed, go ahead. That's just a part of it. Uh, Motivational interviewing is for helping people who are ambivalent or not quite sure yet if they want to proceed. Um, and by the way, if you go ahead into planning too soon, you will find out very quickly that the person's not not coming along with you. How do you know when someone's ready for change? These are some things that Steve Rolnick and I have mentioned in the various editions of our book. First of all, the arguments against change or the client's defense of the status quo just seems to soften and decrease over time, while change talk is increasing. So there's more talk about how the change could happen and so on. And particularly when you begin to hear mobilizing change talk, which we'll come back to in a bit, that's an indication. There's just less discussion about the problem or the issue or the opportunity that you're considering. And resolve is it's a little harder to define, but it can just look like a sort of peaceful feeling that settles over the person. It just kind of quiet down, like they're ready to begin moving forward. They begin asking questions about change and something that we call envisioning, which is speech that indicates that they're thinking about what it would be like to have made this change. And it can sound reluctant in a way. Well, what would I do for friends if I stopped drinking? But that indicates that the person is already envisioning the possibility of having made the change and what it would be like to be there. So that's something to listen for. And then, of course, taking steps, doing little things that move in the direction of the change that you're discussing. There's a kind of continuum of scenarios here. Sometimes there's a clear plan. It's clear what the person would do. And in that case, you just proceed to help the person do it and to make sure that that's what they plan to do. More often, there are a variety of options, different ways that could go about making the change. And so you're talking with the person about, well, which of these might be the best one to try first. And I emphasize that because we always are saying, well, I will work with you until we find what works for you. So the first thing you try may not be the right thing. That's okay. You try a different approach. Very common with medications, for example, in psychiatry. You try out one antidepressant or one particular medication, see how the person responds to it, and if that's not the right one, you find another one that will be better. And then sometimes it's just not at all clear, uh, and you have some formulation to do. Steve and I developed these maps just as an indication of that. So this is a clear plan. Say you know where you want to get to on this island, and you're pretty close, and it's a direct path, right? Sometimes you're a little farther away and you could go in any of several different directions. And it's a matter of deciding which way to proceed as a first try. Okay. And sometimes you're off on a more remote place and it's not exactly clear how you're going to get over there. And so you have a little more formulating to do together. So how do you get to a change plan? It, Importantly, it is evoked also from the person. There's a temptation when you get to planning to say, well, okay, now I can take over and I'll provide the solution. But that's fraught with all kinds of problems. So be sure you have clear goals that are shared. You're wanting to have the same outcome. Consider what the options are. What are the different things that the person could do? Choose an initial plan. That's a negotiation process. It may be that you need to help strengthen the person's confidence in change, and we'll talk a bit about that here shortly, or just strengthen their commitment to what they're doing. So that's the big picture of developing a change plan. Long ago, Steve Rolnick and I realized that in motivation for change, there are at least these two vectors. How important is it to the person to make the change? So some people come in thinking that this is something they really want to do or need to do, but they don't think they can do it. So their importance is high, their confidence is low. So I would really like to stop smoking, but I don't think I can do it, as an example. Sometimes confidence is high and importance is low. So a person might say, I could quit drinking, but I don't want to. And so we have this little 2x2 box here with combinations of high and low importance and confidence. In the yellow box, you have people who don't see the change as very important, although they think they could do it. In the purple box, you have people who think it's very important, but their confidence is low. And they need different kinds of support, actually, although you can do it within the motivational interviewing style. And then there are people in the pink box who have both low importance and low confidence. You've got the toughest work to do with them. And the green box, you seldom see these people who have high importance and high confidence because they're home busy making the change themselves. And so the other three are the kinds of combinations that you meet as as you work with people with motivational interviewing. How do you strengthen confidence for change? We began talking about this in our second edition. Well, in a way, it's very similar to evoking importance. You can ask open questions, and you'll have a chance to do this in an exercise shortly. You ask open questions of the client about how they would be able to do it and what gives them some confidence and so forth. Again, it's more evoking confidence than trying to install it in the person. The confidence ruler, we talked about an importance ruler. Confidence ruler is 0 to 10 scale. How confident are you that you'll be able to do this if you decided to? From 0, not at all confident, I don't think I can, to 10, I'm very sure that I could. What number would you give yourself? And then the next question is, okay, 4. You said 4. Now, why 4 and not 0? Why did you give yourself that number? Because the answer to that is the person's own confidence talk, as they're talking about how and why they think they could do it. Going over past successes is a common approach as well. What have you done in the past that was difficult for you? Have you ever done something like this before? And how did you do that? Another theme is, well, what is there about you? What strengths do you have? What kind of support do you have around you that would help you to do this if you decided to? And then just brainstorming, coming up with all the ideas that you can come up with together without censoring them, without evaluating them along the way. We say more about that in our text, but those are some basic ideas in how you evoke confidence from clients. And then when you hear confidence talk, ability talk, how do you respond to it? In the same way that we talked about for previously with regard to ORs? Ask open questions that ask for more detail. Well, how would you do that in this situation? How could you go about that? Or, what part of you does think that this is possible for you? Tell me about that part. What gives you some confidence here? You can affirm and encourage what the person is saying. You can reflect what the person is saying in terms of confidence talk. So part of you does think that this is possible. You have some doubts about it, but you're already thinking about how you might do this. Summarizing is pulling together the different kinds of themes of confidence that you've heard from your client. And I also mentioned before, one thing that you can do is to ask more specific questions. How then might you be able to deal with this situation if it comes up? You're wanting to not smoke, and now you're in a room with someone else who's smoking, and it looks pretty tempting to you. What could you do in that situation to not wind up smoking yourself? Because it can happen very quickly. And so there you're inviting the person again to tell you how they could do it and why they could do it, what there is about them that would make it possible. So you're still interviewing the person. It's the same approach we've been talking about. You're still evoking from them their own ideas about how they could do something. So let's give this a try. And this is just short. This is a 15-minute practice. But I think it's useful to try to pull together what I'm talking about and just see how it seems to work for you. There'll be 4 people or so in the room. So first of all, and relatively quickly, choose a speaker, someone who can talk about something that they hope to do, or they would like to do, or they have good reason to do, or something is important for them to do. And also, you're not sure whether you can do it, whether you've got the ability or the time or the energy to do it. So it's something that you hope to do, that you would like to do. And also you get your doubts about whether it could actually happen. Now, that's a very common situation for all of us. So if you have something like that you'd be willing to talk about, you could be the speaker. Also, quickly choose a listener. And your job as a listener is just to understand. Don't give any advice. In fact, I'm structuring it pretty well, and we ought to put these questions in the chat, by the way, so that people can get at them. But I suggest asking these 4 questions. First of all, the confidence scale. On a scale from 0 to 10, how confident are you that you could make this change if you did decide to do it? And then you follow up by saying, and why that number and not 0? Again, don't make the mistake of saying why that number and not a higher number, because the answer to that is sustained talk. What is there about you? What talents do you have? What strengths do you have as a person? What supports do you have around you also, that could help you to do it? Now, when you ask these questions, just listen well, use reflective listening to make sure you're understanding what the person is telling you. And ask a little more. Just invite them to continue explaining to you what you've been asking about. Knowing what you know about yourself, this is the 3rd question. Knowing what you know about yourself, how could you go about this in order to succeed? How might you do it? What would be possible for you? And then a fourth question, what have you done successfully in the past that was like this in some way? Again, you're listening for confidence talk. And when you hear confidence talk, reflect it, ask more about it, affirm it, remember the confidence talk and pull it together. Now, there'll be usually two other people who are observers in this exercise. And when we get to minute number 13, just right at 13 minutes, you'll get a signal that it's time now to offer a summary of what you've heard, pulling together all of the confidence talk that you heard. And if you're the listener, you may do this yourself, or you can ask one of the observers to do it, which means the observers need to be paying attention and keeping track of what confidence talk they've heard, because you might be asked to give the summary too. So one of you will then give a summary of all the confidence or ability language that you heard from the person, pull it together into bouquet, and say, well, here's what, if I understood, here's what you have told me. And that's the process. Ask those four questions. Listen well to what the person is telling you. Remember it. When you get to the end, pull it together into a summary, and that's the entire exercise. Just one speaker, one listener, a couple of observers, and if you have some time left over, you can certainly discuss it. But we only have 15 minutes total, so give this a try.